Wait.
Now we
Okay.
are live. It's the user's
Okay.
guide to Article 5. How's it
Good
going,
morning, good morning, good
PC?
afternoon. How are you? I'm good. How are you, Rubber Fingers?
I'm doing great. Uh, and now tell me what were you saying? The mainstream media is now acknowledging climate
Well, I'm just
change.
right. I mean, it was sort of like it's on their like the number one headline of the
Mm-hmm.
on their website or whatever, NBC's, which means they're probably talking about it. So they've they've always, I wouldn't say always. A lot of times they just for many years they didn't really report on it. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was always this, well, there could be two sides to this story.
Right.
I mean, I'd say when I think of mainstream media accepting it would be like Newsweek wrote an article probably 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or had a headline. The front cover was, the environment is critical or the environment is getting very bad, and
Okay.
it was more that the idea was for humans. It was that humans the were making it bad for themselves, sort of. And then and then there's just been years where they don't really report on it hardly at all. Like what they don't talk about. Okay, like they don't talk about how why there are so many people coming to America wanting asylum
Right.
from Central and South America. The mainstream media doesn't really talk about that, right? I mean, they do stories on that. They don't seem to. And it's because a lot of it is because of climate change, which has been done by man and mostly, unfortunately, by America.
Right.
Because the number one polluter in the entire world is the American military. So be proud, Americans. Be proud. We're number one.
I mean, it's good that our media is now starting to talk about it. I mean, or at least, I mean,
Well, or actually kind
some
of
of it.
shout it. Actually, now give it
Mm-hmm.
some real coverage like it should have gotten 50 fucking years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just letting you know that that's how that I feel about it. And I know that, and that's what I mean. Like those, there's been this thing, there's always been this idea that it was always going to be much further out. That was what the mainstream media to me always kind of professed was, or kind of was their theory. Like, oh, we really need to start dealing with it, but the scientists think, it's going to be okay, and we just got to work on it. Like we have like 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
but now they found out that we don't have like 100 years, and we never did. Do you know what I mean? But they just were saying that because one
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard to predict. I mean,
study said that.
yeah.
No, the scientists that have been doing it in the 1950s, from the 1970s. In the
Mm-hmm.
1970s, that's what I'm saying. When I got like out of high school, or right around the time I'm graduating from high school, this thing comes out, this big report, and it was reported on then because it was. I think it came out and they couldn't really catch it so much. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't so much like there was an internet, but it was just such an idea that the scientists had come up with these theories and this ideas and had made this whole long process of what were the things that were going to be factors in this, and a lot of and to show a path, a line, a
Mm-hmm.
point, from A
Yeah.
to B.
I
And
mean,
so,
they're scientists, so
go
I'm
ahead.
sure they did figure in the growth of technology and the growth of industry and how it would get more accelerated. But
They
you know,
did, and that's why they made their prediction that we had like, 70 years or something, I think is what they 2040. Yep, around 2040.
Mm-hmm.
and as of very recently, and occasionally the mainstream media or some, and when I say mainstream media, I use that term somewhat loosely. I mean, like there'd be a magazine
Mm-hmm.
or a news show or a something come up that might be up and coming, even like current TV that dealt with the environment sort of thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
they just sort of wane. It goes away, or it, you know what I'm saying? So it just gets shoved under the rug again, swept under the rug again.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we can put on the back burner. Well, now 20 years is not something you can put on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
20
Well,
years, you got 20 years. That ain't nothing. Go ahead.
I mean, we could address that problem with a amendment. I mean, the Constitution, I don't know how you would write it, but it could be something like um, emissions have to be.
But within 10 years, America has to be sustainable.
Uh-huh.
Bomb. That's it. On every level. I mean, on every level. As far as energy goes, it has to be. Because if not, then where are you
Mm-hmm.
going to go?
Right.
If you are not there in 10 years, because we can't roll back what we've done, is everything I've
Mm-hmm.
been told as well. Everything I've heard, Tom Hartman used to do a lot of stuff on it.
Well, we could. I mean, planting more trees and stuff. You could do stuff like that.
Well, also in that we start just throwing everything we can to renewables
Mm-hmm.
and really finding out how, because I think there is probably a dirty side to renewables, because if you look at how solar panels are made, it's not real,
Right.
you know, it's still kind of a dirty thing. It's still kind of a welding thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a dirty thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a
Mm-hmm.
dirty
Dirty
industry, it's a
secret.
dirty, well, or it's just like we all know welders, it's like unfortunately a profession that
Mm-hmm.
is needed,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a pretty dirty profession. A lot of them die early
Oh.
because of what they're breathing in.
Mm-hmm.
You're burning metal against other metals, and you're adhering them together, and you're doing things like that, so that causes
Mm-hmm.
stuff comes off of that. In fact, they're talking about that now. Oh, that was a new one. So there's a lot more plastic in the sea life, and including the ones we eat.
Right.
So we may be able to farm oysters, but it doesn't mean we'll be able to eat them
Hmm.
because they don't break down plastic, and that means we just eat it and we just ingest. So is that what's going to eventually just kill people? They're going to get. Maybe that's really what the coronavirus comes from. I'll start that conspiracy theory. See what they do with that. What?
Oh,
That the coronavirus was from eating too much plastic.
I don't think so. But uh, it would definitely
Fun.
be
It's a
good
good one
to.
to start. Ah.
uh,
So you
uh,
go ahead. You have a little news today.
should we start? Let's start with reading Article 5.
Okay, I'll let you
Let's.
read it this time.
Okay.
Is that okay, or do you want me
Yeah,
to
no,
read it?
I'll do it. I kind of want to try and go. Well, no, I won't go completely from memory, but I'm almost there.
You're getting brave. You're getting
Yeah.
bold, but that would be a risk.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Okay. The Congress, whenever two-thirds of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of three-fourths of the several. On the application of the legislatures of of two-thirds of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. Let me read that part again. On the application of the legislatures of two-thirds of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of three-fourths of the several states, or by conventions in three-fourths thereof, as one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the ninth section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate.
Hey.
Okay.
So to
There it
finish with
is.
what that guy said the last time, to finish with our last little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because we got kind of cut off there
Mm-hmm.
at the end of our last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say, because we were discussing if whether he should, we should revise the 17th or
Yeah, or
amend the
abolish the
17th
17th is what that guy was
or
calling
abolish
for.
it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you see, it wasn't so far-fetched that I had said that we should ask for a convention to amend the Article 5.
No, it's not far fetched at all.
That's
I
a
mean, I
joke.
don't know it would, what part you'd want to amend and what it would accomplish,
I just get rid of the 1808 just because it's just so,
because it's outdated
oh,
now. So it's just tidy it up. It's just more of like a,
it's just tidied up. It
yeah,
is. It
just
just
clean
be
it up.
more cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I hear you.
that's all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so go with ahead with your news now.
Okay. Yes. So another article I found, which I don't know how uh, I don't know how rich the discussion on it will be, but it's from Colorado, the Complete Colorado, um, page two. I guess that's the full name of the website. Page two, Complete Colorado, and it's written by Clayton Calvin. And the title of this article is Calvin, Colorado Legislature Undermines Push to Reform Congress. And so basically, to sum it up, Colorado has rescinded their call for the Convention of States. Uh,
On
sorry,
the
start over.
either one or both or
Can't
I'm
understand you.
sorry.
Sorry, start over.
No, no. Oh, I'm saying. Oh, I'm. I moved my chair. Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear
Yes,
me now?
yes, now we can.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I was just saying. Do you mean the call for the convention for term limits or a balanced
Yes.
budget or both?
Although
Okay.
in this article, he's not really talking about term limits so much. He mostly talks about federal spending. Or no, he does talk about term limits. He mentions the balanced budget requirement. So I guess he's talking about a balance. I guess I need to look more into the Convention of States actual language of their resolutions that they've been calling. I don't know if it's the same in every state that they've called.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. That's part of what the problem was when I told you when we've discussed the woman from South Carolina, North Carolina, the
Mm-hmm.
Convention of States who was on the YouTube video, which I give credit to whoever it was that I gave credit at the time
Mm-hmm.
before. Sorry, I can't bring it up just from the top of my head, but if you look it up, you can find it. But she is saying that she feels that that is a real deficit to their building of getting to a convention. Is that the language is not the same in every one of the states.
Sure.
So you could be having the same problem with. I mean, then if we felt that way, would be the same with the CAA in a sense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that one's the language doesn't necessarily match, and that we've discussed that could be a problem that they'll probably bring up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a criticism of it, or they. But you and I have talked about it about which ones they have.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the thing is that what they need to do is, and that's what she was wanting to do was sort of go back and figure out which ones, because this has been going on for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
This is not really that new. The Convention of the States, I mean, it's like, I think 30 years,
Uh-huh.
25 years. It's been a while that they've
Has it?
called
Yeah.
for a balanced budget. Probably
Yeah.
starting in the 80s, 90s at
Well,
least.
so there's the balanced budget amendment, which was like its own thing. But I think
Right.
I forget if they had sunset dates in their resolutions or something, but people don't really talk about the balanced budget amendment anymore. Uh,
No, because it became very unpopular because
yeah,
economists said that'll destroy the economy because
right.
we are floating all these loans. If you call them due, we don't have the money. What are we going to do? So you're going to crash it. So basically, that's when they went to term limits
So
because
basically,
they realized
right.
that. Go ahead.
So this guy, Clayton Calvin, he mostly talks about the budget. He doesn't like he mentions that term limits are in there, but he mostly says uh like right here.
Well, I think they're trying to bring back this balanced budget for because it was kind of a Tea Party thing. And
Right.
I think they're kind of hoping to rally that because that's how they won 100 seats in Congress. The Tea
Mhm.
Party won 100 seats in Congress.
Mhm.
And there's no movement like that on the right now. There isn't. They've
And
sort of been,
well,
I mean,
there
if
is
anything, they're
in this
Trumpsters, but
convention of
go ahead.
states
Go ahead.
because it is in
Well,
there
yeah.
that they have a section that they're calling for uh here's his let me read this paragraph. He says
Okay.
some restraint on debt with exceptions for emergencies, for example, is both reasonable and forthright. I disagree. I mean, it's reasonable, it's not forthright. It's totally contrary to everything our economy is built on, so you'd have to completely restructure the economy, but whatever. That could be a good thing, I guess. Currently, government spending is constitutionally limitless. With a debt cap, the U.S. government would have to prioritize and cut fat. So, yeah, he wants to cut fat. I wonder what fat he's talking about. Is he talking about the military? I have no idea. Politicians would actually be forced to balance the benefits of their re-election promises against the costs, period. Germany, for example, constitutionally prohibits debt beyond 0.35% of its GDP. Okay.
Poor
So,
Germany. They're a little crazy.
yeah. So he's talking he mostly I think wants that debt thing, not he doesn't talk as much about the term limits, but I think he is but the amendment or the resolution that was rescinded from Colorado was the Convention of States, which popularly right now is mostly focused on the term limits thing. So, but he does make good points in this article about the convention. I think we disagree with him on the substance, but we completely agree on the process. And he has a well written, he has several well written paragraphs about. Here, this is the last paragraph of the article. Opponents of such reason. Oh yeah, well let me first before I read that part. He talks about as the convention has become a more popular idea, its opponents have raised fears of a, quote, runaway convention. According to them, once a convention is called, its topics could switch, risking altering our foundational document in unplanned and radical ways. But that does not appreciate the incredibly broad consensus 38 states require to actually change the Constitution. These alarms tend to be coupled with accusations, for example, that balancing the budget or passing any debt cap at all is itself radical, so it's all best taken with a grain of salt. So, I mean,
Well, yeah, he's trying to lump in there
yeah.
his his cause, which is pretty
Hmm.
would not be beneficial to the whole frickin' world because the petrodollar, okay,
Hmm.
America. supports the petrodollar. So if we collapse our economy, what do we do to the rest of the world? I mean, I
Right.
think 1929 is a perfect example of that.
But he dispels the runaway fears, and let me just read these
Okay.
uh, this paragraph. Any proposal must be widely popular to make it to a convention. It must be even more popular as well drafted to be ratified into the Constitution. To be so popular, it must be forthright and reasonable. Unpopular or usurpacious proposals simply stand zero chance of making into law because, yeah, and I'll just say it's because of the 3/4 ratification threshold. And then his last paragraph is the one that I think is the rings the most sound and the most appropriate for the time. He says, opponents of such reasonable outcomes, again, I don't think his outcomes are reasonable, but his point is still good. Opponents of such reasonable outcomes are right to feel threatened. They might not get their way, but they are wrong to attack the process. They target broadly popular initiatives with misinformation about procedure rather than with earnest critiques on the merits. As of now, however, until the convention groundswell comes to the fore, they have convinced our own employees at the state capitol. So he doesn't name them. I think we know who it is, but
Yes,
he
and there must be a reason why that he doesn't name them. He must have some concerns
uh
that
huh.
they'll come after him or whatever. But the other thing is that in a way he misses the point. I mean, he's trying to, if he okay, if he is saying this to the audience in the hopes that that's what they're seeing. The real truth is that yes, I mean at the end, the last sentence that he says about getting the people that supposedly are supposed to work for us do something that's not in our best interest.
Mm-hmm.
But that's done a lot, right? That has been worked out to because they're supposed to do things that may not actually be in our best interest now, but in the future it will be or whatever the hell. To say like we don't know what we need or you know what I mean. We're just a group of children that need, taken care of. You know what I'm saying here?
Right.
On the idea. But part of it is that the what he's missing is that the lobbyists and that's who they are, wherever they are,
Right.
whatever kind they are, whether it's Voices for Children, whether it's, pet your dog and kiss your cat
Mm-hmm.
lobbyists. You know what I mean? If it's any of them, they're in bed figuratively because monetarily and supportively they're in bed with the politicians, your state legislators.
And
And
they're in
that's what
bed
he's
with
not
whoever
exactly said.
they're in bed with
Go ahead.
whoever funds them too.
And donors, right. Yes,
Donors.
that's
Right.
what I'm saying. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where
Right.
he wants to still not put the real taint of truth upon it.
Well, it's like he wants to have a good faith argument about the merits of the subject, but he's not addressing uh the real rot at the heart of the system, which is the money being spent. So it's like really you need to fix that
Yes,
problem
the
first.
the
Bef-
the connection between
yeah,
the lobbyists and the state legislators. Yes,
exactly. You need to fix that problem before you can fix any other problems. So,
right. And I mean, you have to at least acknowledge it, and that's what
mhm,
I'm saying. He's not even acknowledging that that's why
mhm,
that why the state legislators are accepting this ridiculous argument, which
right.
we always say makes absolutely no sense. And just like he said, like, well, and when you say to him, well, would you, if you send me to a convention to do so and I come back with another one, are you going to ratify it? Do you know what I mean? They won't even discuss that when we've brought that sort of up in committee or whatever. They just don't even acknowledge that that's like part of the Article 5. Like, that's just their collective memory loss or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's because they're bought and paid for by the lobbyists, which, yes, are also then the donors of the lobbyists. in
Mm-hmm.
reality. But it's the lobbyist that has this one-on-one relationship with them where that they can keep some separation from like ExxonMobil or Nike or
Mm-hmm.
Amazon or Coke or whoever you want to just pick. Disney. I mean, you just go down the list, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, do we want to engage with the argument about the the debt and deficit on good faith, or
Absolutely
should
not.
we
I
just
already.
dismiss it? You already basically did it. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense for um, our current economy. I mean, I think you and I are both against all the radical spending in certain things. The military, we shouldn't be just writing blank checks of trillions to the defense, quote unquote, defense department.
Well, and you know, it's not like we just been doing this for a year.
Uh huh.
To anyone who listens to us in the future or now, this has been going on since I graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
This is a long frickin' time, ladies and gentlemen, cats and dogs,
Mm-hmm.
bears and beasts, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's a long time. So why? What is the reason?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. And I think again, Wolfpack has the right answer. You've got to fix the problem that's causing money to be spent on the wrong things. Like we want to spend money on the right things. We want to deficit spend on fixing the environment,
Well,
reformating our infrastructure to make it green. Like it's okay to deficit spend if it's on the right things. It's bad to deficit spend if it's on the wrong things.
and even when I look at like the military budget, okay, what it is if you want to spend the money on the veterans that we have
Right.
sent off to war for some reason that I can't even begin to comprehend, but okay, we'll go on that. I think that the least that they deserve is whatever care
Right.
that they need when they come home. And if it costs us a fortune, okay, but I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather it go there,
Yeah.
or that they get paid a decent amount of money, or that their families get great benefits if they die being a soldier, you
Right.
know? I mean all that, I don't care, but for the contractors to get it,
Right.
that's just obscene.
Or
That's
the
—
F-35, wasting it on
yes, I
the
mean that's a
F-35.
contractor. That's just
Mm-hmm.
basically a contractor, and those are all just kind of engineers and people that put prototypes together,
Yeah, for the
welders,
F-35,
and
for that F-35 program, we could have ended homelessness several times over and
yeah,
had
I
a
mean,
or any,
okay, like
any number of problems could have been fixed easily for that just one military program.
I mean, the one that we had was the frickin' tank. Okay, like there was this tank that they were spending all this money on. Well, you couldn't even use a tank in Vietnam
Mm-hmm.
because it was a frickin' mud
Jungle.
hole. Yes, they won't go. They
Yep.
will not go. Tanks will not go in the jungle. Okay? So even after that, they kept just pouring money into it till finally, like 25 years later, they still couldn't get the tank to do what they said that they were going to do, like in the mission statement or in the agreement that you make when you get a contract with someone. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this product will do this or whatever that it is. That's what you have to agree to, or we'll get your server up and running and it'll be able to do this.
Right.
These five things, and then you're done, right? I can't remember what it's called. It's been so long since I've been in
Your
that business.
deliverable in media, it's called your deliverable.
It's the kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so after 25 years, they couldn't do it.
Yep.
And they had kept renewing the contract. And finally, enough people in America finally said this is ridiculous. And so
Well,
they got rid of it. And yeah, now we're back in the Middle East, but
yeah, I mean, I think it would be really
it didn't
fun.
work anyway.
It would be really
Go
fun
ahead.
to get a convention of states person on here. Someday soon we'll have to start having guests because I want to start like talking about these issues with people who disagree with us because I mean, you know.
I find that they'll, well,
Mhm.
I, 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 I think it's a difficult thing sometimes to have a reasonable disagreement
Mhm.
about these things. Do you know what I mean? And part of it is that if you're continuing to support something like the balanced budget, it's because you're not wanting to do your homework, really. Because if you did, you would realize why it became so unpopular.
Mhm.
Because the corporations would just fold, and those are all the donors.
What do you
Because
mean they
they
would
have
fold?
tons. Who do you think? Who do you think owes all the debt? That's what they do. That's their big thing. Don't use your money, use somebody else's.
You're
So
saying
large corporations like
the
or
government
no, like
owes the money
Disney
to the
or like
corporations?
Amazon or like whatever. They have huge amounts of loans at these like Chase Chase Manhattan or
Uh-huh.
Goldman Sachs or all these huge banks, Wells Fargo, whatever you want to say on these, ExxonMobil, right?
Right.
They they try not to use their own money.
Right.
So if that debt were called and now the government needs to call in all the money,
Mhm.
then all the corporations have to give it to the banks so the banks can give it to the government because
Okay.
that's how the national treasury works
Well, that sounds
or
like
our
a good
treasury
that
system
sounds
sort of
like you're
works.
arguing in favor of. I mean, those all sound like good things to me.
No, it'd be horrible. It'd be horrible. I mean, we have a terrible system,
I know,
but you
that's the
don't
thing.
want to just, we have
Yeah,
a horrible system,
we have
but
a
you
house of
cannot crash
cards.
and burn it.
Yeah, you don't want to just pull the rug out from under your house of cards where it would just leave
Yes,
people, without jobs, without. No, I
that's what would
agree. I
happen
mean,
because
mhm.
what would the corporations do? The ones at the top aren't going to give up their money.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I
So
mean,
their businesses would go be, it'd be like 1929 all
mhm.
over again in a way.
It is
Because it is
just
the same. Go
it
ahead.
is just misunderstanding the real root of the problem because again, it's not that we're spending money. That's not the problem. The problem is that we're spending money on the wrong things. And I'm sure that's what I would like to ask this author or somebody on that side. Like, what are you talking about when you say cut? Because my guess is, and when I've talked to conservatives before, they always seem to think that like half the national budget is spent on welfare programs, or like the majority of our government spending is on welfare programs. And it's like, well,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and that's part of what I'm saying is that if you want to believe that, it is because you haven't done even the slightest amount
Mhm.
of inquisitiveness. Somebody's
Mhm.
told you that and you've just believed them. And whether it was your parent or something, at some point you grow up, you have to question the things that were said to you. You can, in your own, come to your own agreement that these are the things you want to believe. Sometimes you can say, I want to believe this and I know there's no rational reason and I don't give a shit. And that's
Mhm.
okay. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying you don't have to. But on other things where that there you involve yourself with a whole host of other people and society, that's a whole different set of rules and behaviors of which you have to abide by.
Mhm.
Okay? So that's where we're having a problem right now in our reality, in our society, is this breakdown of reality.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm saying. When I was in high school, we would sit around the quad, and I was like a radical then, as I've told everybody. I
Mhm.
haven't, I think I softened or became less
Mhm.
radical, less as involved radically when I had children, I guess, because I was busy doing other things.
Sure.
And then, but when I was young, I thought that we should try to do something to save the world.
Mhm.
Anyway, so back then, it was known that America spent something like as much on its military as the next 10 countries in the frickin' world,
Mm-hmm.
or 3 times what the next 10 countries spend on it. It hasn't changed. You know what
No.
I mean? That figure has not, that ratio has not changed in 50 years.
And it's
So,
all and that's all fat too. It's not like all that money is going to uh is being wisely spent and efficiently used to make the military stronger. It's mostly
right.
going to just contractors, just overpaid salaries of contractors and and
Well, you have the contractor at the top, like Blackwater
hmm
or whoever it is now,
right.
who's,
Mercenaries.
mercenaries basically. And so you have the guys at the top that are really making the money, and I'm sure that there are some mercenaries that are making a fair amount of money because that you got to pay for that kind of
hmm
service,
But it's
and
just going to
it don't
waste.
come
It's
cheap. I
going
hear.
for it's going
I
to
get
like
that. I get
yeah.
that. It's going to steal resources
hmm
from other countries, is what it's going
Well,
for.
yeah, that too. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it is misunderstanding the problem. What we need is better people in Congress and in the White House to to spend money more wisely. Sorry, I got a train
The
out
thing
here.
is that they don't want to because then it doesn't behoove them. It doesn't get them anywhere. And now we've seen what's going on in the congressional district in Ohio, the 11th congressional district. The amount of money that can just pour in,
I mean,
right?
I think everybody's got to agree that that's a real problem. I mean, I wonder if conservatives would say, "Oh, that's fine. That's just speech. That's just people using their speech." I mean, it's obviously
Well,
not just speech.
unfortunately, as we sort of talked about before, is what makes us believe on political ads on TV about anyone. I mean, I don't believe it about the frickin' soap they're wanting
Right.
me to buy. They're not. It doesn't have to be factual. It's an ad. So
Yeah, I
when did Americans just become
mhm,
so
gullible.
I'll believe this political ad because it's a political ad, but I'm not going to believe that ad that if I don't quit smoking cigarettes, I'll die earlier. You know what I mean? I don't get it. I don't get it.
I think
They just
those
pick and choose the craziest fucking things.
actually I think people do believe every like I think those kind of people who believe political ads, they probably do believe that some pill can make their dick bigger or, or that some uh I mean, they probably really think that oh, if it's on TV, it has to be confirmed, They can't just false advertise on TV because that would be illegal. It's like, are you kidding me? They probably or that this sugar cereal is part of a healthy breakfast. They they believe it, and I wonder if you really gave people a survey. I'm guessing if you asked them like, do you believe what you see on advertisements on TV, or do you believe this or this thing that was, or show them, do a sample study, show them TV ads, and say, what do you make about the truth claims in these different advertisements? If you set them down in like a clinical setting like that where they had to really think about it, they probably would all come away saying, "No, I don't really believe that," or "I'm skeptical" or something. Their skeptical level would go up. But when they're just sitting there and it's just on in the background and it's just beaming into their subconscious, it works better because they're not really thinking about it. They're just hearing the message, and the message is just you know
There is
it,
that.
when you go to the polls, that message is what comes forth to the front of your mind because you've
Well,
had it repeated so many times.
there is that. There is the other thing is that maybe you like a sugary breakfast cereal. And
Mhm.
so being told that it's okay for you makes you feel so much better when you eat it.
Right.
The drift here.
Yeah, you want to
So I
believe
think
it.
that has a lot to do with
You
it, right?
believe what you want to
Because
believe.
they're right, and you're just not gonna dig too deeply into that. If they want to tell you that that's what it is, then obviously that's what you're just gonna believe.
Or if you
And
want to be
that's sort of what
afraid,
I
if you want to be afraid of change, if you're the type of person who's afraid of change, even if the change would be really beneficial to you or to the majority of people, if you want to be fearful of change because that's in your nature, then you're going to believe what a politician tells you about how they'll go in there and preserve the status quo, or that they support uh, all the popular things and none of the unpopular
well,
things.
and that's sort of it is that if someone who has and Nina Turner has been campaigning for a long time, and not just in this um, situation for the House. She has long said things that, as she always says, I've got receipts. Like people can go back years and look at what
Mhm.
she said, and her message has stayed pretty much the same.
Yep.
I mean, almost verbatim. There's probably a few little things that have changed here and there, but
Mhm.
if I had to, I'd say it was really close
Sure.
because I have heard her from way back.
Mhm.
And she so if the people of Cleveland cannot see her for who she is when she stands among them,
Mhm.
to be seen by them for all these years, not just today, not just for this race. I mean, it's not like she's ever left them and gone away, except she campaigned a little for Bernie. Okay, but she's not left and gone to another state. She's
Mhm.
not left and moved to Washington, and she hasn't become a lobbyist. Can I go on and on about all the things she hasn't done?
Right.
She has stayed there among them, to be among them,
Mhm.
for them to see her. And she stands and she fights.
Mhm.
Even though she has no power anymore beyond what you and I have had, she has her, as she always says, her three bones, right?
Mhm.
So she's going to use that jawbone to stand up for herself and others forever.
Mhm.
That's her promise. So um, if they're going to just believe somebody who floated into town on a, you know, a kiss and a prayer,
Mhm.
then then who is she? What has she done? Where has she stood? And where has she been to be seen for all these years? And that's what I'm saying. If you as a real person, a real voter, cannot in your way assess some part of that, just of your own personal history,
Mhm.
rubber fingers, then how can we ever win? Because it's a betrayal of your own self.
Well, what I'm worried about, I mean, I get like a fast heartbeat and I get almost like, anxiety or something
An
or whatever you
anxiety
call it
attack.
whenever I think about it, cuz it is, if something happens, like if the power goes out in the vote counting place, or if I don't know what, you know what I'm saying? If the app that's supposed to be counting these votes crashes or some shenanigans like that, I'm going to go full QAnon and I'm going to go down there. I'm going to move to Ohio and like they're going to have to, restrain me or something.
And you and Sam Ronan, and you and Sam Ronan are going to get together. You know who he was? He was the guy.
You cut out. Who is it? Uh-oh. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Sam Ronan, you were saying. Uh-oh. Cliffhanger. Let me Google who that is. An American mercenary formerly associated with the CIA, played by Robert De Niro. Oh, from the movie Ronin. Hmm. I've never seen that movie. 1998, Ronin, Robert De Niro as Sam. I will have to check that one out. Quotes: Whenever there is any doubt, there is no doubt. That's the first thing they teach you. Who taught you? I don't remember. That's the second thing they teach you. I don't remember. I have no idea. I don't know. I got no idea what you're talking about. That's one of my favorite lines. Oh, well, we lost PC. She just disconnected. Maybe she'll reconnect, but she's probably got to go anyways. Well, it's been real. I guess the next time we talk, it will be after the special election in Ohio's 11th district, so we will have results to talk about. Hopefully everything is hunky-dory and goes the way we expect it to go, because if it looks like there's shenanigans, it's revolution time. Okay, well, that's it. I think we'll end it there. Keep hope alive with Article 5.